also we have a tremendous wuss to have another great rabbinic personality in our midst today, Rabbi Menachem head of REITS, which stands for Yitzchak Rabbinical Seminary. It's often when you see really like prodigious, prodigy type people, when they're younger, like the guys who know all the Mishnayos, those little kids, you follow their career, and oftentimes they peter out. So it's so wonderful to see someone who, at a young age, had such amazing kochos of eloquence, finding the right words, leadership, natural leader. I remember this morning just how proud your father was always of you. And but someone who, from there, continued and built, and after years of learning, became a very chashuv rav and ran a seminary for women, and then took on Michael took on an amazing, really one of the amazing positions in the rabbinic world, heading REITS, which is such a major. That's the really like the why of the YU of Yeshiva University, and Mamish continued weiter, and now also further continued as someone who gives guidance and perspective and chizuk to many people. It's a real spus and a pleasure for me as someone who knew Menachem in high school already to welcome to our yeshiva, and Bezrat Hashem will continue our bond with this amazing institution. Our institutions will be mitchaber more and more together.
I appreciate, Rabbi Schoolmaker, you're sharing the nice things you know about me from high school. We've known each other for an incredibly long time. It's a wonderful thing to be able to see Chaverim. So many of those who I was friends with in high school went on to positions of leadership, and it's really wonderful to be able to look back and to see how many of our chevra are in places around the world, Baruch Hashem, teaching Torah. I wanted to come this morning to really get a better taste of what goes on here. Shapell's has a name that goes around the world, and there's so many individuals, perhaps even individuals who perhaps know much more, have been learning for many years, who don't have some of the basic skills that you're getting. And my interest of coming here and seeing is actually to take even fellows who are applying for the Smicha program, but never really worked out the basic understanding of how you go through a shakra b'chai. They may have heard hundreds of thousands of shiur. The things that you're getting here, the basic understanding of how to go through a Gemara, is something that really is the building block for everything else that you'll be able to, Mitzvah Hashem, accomplish and learn. Very often when I speak about Inyanei Tefila, also in the yeshiva. There's an interesting piece in the introduction to Rav Pincus's Sha'arim Bat Tefila. In the beginning of Sha'arim Bat Tefila, Rav Pincus explains that when a person comes to a yeshiva for the first Zman, they're at a certain level. And I think this is a yeshiva we really feel that. You go on to another shir, a person comes back Shana Bet, he comes back, make a plug. People come back Shana Bet, and you come back Shana. Could you imagine being here in Shapell's, and you're in the middle of Shana Bet, and you look back, and you realize that your learning is in the same place as when you arrived here 18 months before. So you consider yourself a failure. How could that be? You've gone from shir to shir to shir. How could that be? So Pincus writes that it's interesting that when it comes to our tefillah, we often don't make a similar kind of cheshbon. A person could be in yeshiva for 1 month, their tefillah is over here. For 3 months, their tefillah is still over here. They go to yeshiva for 18 months, their tefillah might still be in the same place. But unfortunately, we don't consider that to be a failure. So as we're continuing in our learning, that's sort of my place in yeshiva is to help guide the yeshiva to whatever I can. But my place is to, in addition to the gains that the fellows are making in terms of learning, to be able to speak about tefillah, to be able to see that we're moving forward. Parshas Vayetze is a very, very powerful parsha of tefillah. It's a very powerful. You have, of course, the creation according to Chazal of Ma'ariv at the beginning of the parsha. That Vayifka b'makom v'yolen sham. That Yaakov has an incident where he isn't exactly sure. It's night. He isn't exactly sure what's going to be next, and he creates the idea of a tefillah zarvus. But there's also a very powerful yesod of tefillah that's hidden away in a Ramban in the Parsha. And a Ramban that you have to be the Ramban to say something like this. Sometimes it's good to be the Ramban. You can get up and you can say something, but sometimes if you're the Ramban, you can get away with saying something that is not simple for others to say. This is a Hasidic Shemaisa. This is not obviously the Ramban. There's a Hasidic Shemaisa of a couple that are trying to have a child for so long, and they're going through the difficulties of infertility. Finally, they walk many, many, many days to be able to meet with a particular Rebbe, and they're online, and they get to the Rebbe very, very late at night, and the Rebbe takes them in, and they explain to the Rebbe what it is they need. They said, we need a bracha to have a child. Where are you from? You have Rebbes over there. You have people you can turn to for a bracha over there. Because no, we've heard you're the only one that can help us. You're the only one that can give us a bracha that'll be able to bring us this child. So the Rebbe looks down and the Rebbe says, I'm not sure if I can help you. And the Gabbaim are a little bit surprised. The Rebbe's been known to give everybody a bracha who comes. I don't think I could help you. Maybe you come back in the morning. We'll see. The couple's very, very confused. They're exhausted. They got there in the middle of the night. They find some inn to stay in. They come back in the morning, and the Rebbe says, so tell me what happened when you went back to your rooms. They says, actually, we were, to be honest, we were really very upset. We heard that you give brachas. We came all this way to get the bracha from you, and we didn't know what to do. And they said, we just cried. We got on the floor. We said Tehillim. We said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what is he going to do? The Rebbe can't help us. Maybe you can help us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rebbe said, okay, I think I can give you a bracha. The problem is that sometimes we don't understand the power that each one of us has to be able to talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be able to ask him for things, to be able to speak to him directly. This concept that we can speak directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a radical idea. Jonathan Sachs has in one of his books, fascinating. It's a radical idea that came from our religion, that anybody can talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu directly. We can just talk to him. We can ask him for what we want. There's a fascinating exchange in the parsha yesterday between Rachel and her husband Yaakov. It's difficult to understand. We have to understand it at their level. But it's a fascinating exchange. Yaakov heads out. He leaves home for a while. And something for you guys to think about. He leaves home for a while. Suddenly he comes home. One thing leads to another. He's got 4 wives. He's got 11 children. And everything seems to go, right? That's the way it works, right? You go and you put in a certain hishtadlus and you come back. It all works out except for Rachel Imeinu. Rachel Imeinu, it's not working out. And the pasuk says, "Vatera Rachel ki lo yolda liYaakov, vatekane Rachel ba'achosa." Rachel sees that she has not been able to have a child with Yaakov, and she's jealous of her sister. Vatomer el Yaakov havali banim. She says to him, "Give me children, and if not, I want to die." Don't judge Rachel. Having spent many years in the Rabbanos and many years with couples trying to have a child, many years with women specifically trying to have a child, it's a very, very painful thing. She's seeing everybody going on around her. This was the husband she was supposed to have. It's not such a strange response from Rachel. Vayichar af Yaakov berachel, but Yaakov gets upset. Vayomer hasachas elokim anochi. He says, I can't make this happen for you. I love you. I can't do it. I'm not in the place of Hashem. Asher mana mimech privaten. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's decision. It's not something that came from me. One thing leads to another. What does she decide to do then? She decides to give her handmaiden by the name of Bilhah. She decides to give Bilhah to Yaakov, just like Sarah had given her handmaiden Hagar to Avram when she wasn't able to have a baby. So Rachel says, we'll try the same thing. And then Leah gets into the action. And Leah gives Zilpah to Yaakov. And finally, about 20 psukim later, Vayiskor Elokim et Rachel, Vayishma Aleh Elokim Vayiftach et Rachma. It works. Kadosh Baruch Hu remembers Rachel. He remembers Rachel and he opens up her womb and she has a child. Of course she has Yosef. What leads to what here? So if you ask me, so it seems that the way the parsha is going, it seems that the fact that she took this step, nothing else was working. Yaakov is davening, Rachel's davening, everybody's davening, they have Tehillim groups, they're doing everything. Nothing's working. She does this act, which she learned from Sarah Imenu, and she gives over her handmaiden to Yaakov, and somehow it works. The Ramban says that's not what happened. The Ramban says an amazing thing here. The Ramban says, "V'choshva ki be'avoso osa yisana Yaakov v'yulbash sak ve'efer v'yispal." She thinks that Yaakov is taking care of the family's tefillah needs. She thinks that Yaakov is the one davening, and Yaakov, through his tefillah, is the one who's going to be able to get them what she wants, and Rachel is, according to the Ramban, not davening. He says, finally, v'hinei tzadekes b'ra'osa shelo tucha lisamech al tfilas Yaakov. When she realizes, again, whatever this exchange was, she says, give me children. Yaakov says, I can't do that for you. I can't play the role of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'hinei tzadekes b'ra'osa shelo tucha lisamech al tfilas Yaakov. When she sees she can't rely on the tefillah of Yaakov for whatever reason, Shava lehispalel al atzma. She went back to daven for herself. Was it the first time she davened? Did she daven with an extra fervor, understanding that she couldn't rely? Yaakov is the Gadol Hador. Yaakov is the Gadol Hador. She had her husband davening. But then she comes and she davens herself, or she davens harder herself. El Shomei Tza'aka. V'zehu, and that's what it means in Pasuk Chav Bet, Vayishma Eleha, Vayizkor Elokim et Rachel. God remembers Rachel, Vayishma Eleha. God listens to her. What brought about this child? HaKadosh Baruch Hu was seemingly waiting for her to daven. Her to daven. Yaakov is davening. Rachel Imenu was great. Yaakov is davening. Isn't he covering it? For whatever reason, HaKadosh Baruch Hu seemed to want Rachel to ask for it. Rachel has all the schuyos in the world. Everything is there. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I want you to ask for it. It's not always that simple. There are reasons why HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us something or not give us something. There are times where we haven't deserved it. But then again, how much have we deserved? Right? There's an interesting piece in the Sefer HaIkarim, and Rav Yosef Albo writes that you shouldn't say, I'm not going to ask for this because I don't deserve it. Sounds like a very good thing to say. I'm not going to ask for such a big thing because I don't deserve it. He says, you're effectively saying that all the things that you have already, you've deserved. How many of us could say in today's world that we've deserved all of the things that we have? HaKadosh Baruch Hu does chasadim for us. There are things we ask for that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows is not for our good, and therefore maybe He won't give it to us. But there are things that we simply need to ask, not to rely on others, but to simply ask, befrat, to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for this thing. There's a similar Ramban. There's a similar Ramban by Moshe Rabbeinu. An even more shocking Ramban when Moshe Rabbeinu was talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by the sneh. Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I want you to go down and I want you to take the people out of Egypt. And Moshe's got one thing after another. For whatever reason, Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't want to do it. So then Moshe Rabbeinu, when he seems to be losing the argument, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? I have a speech defect. Right? Kvad peh anochi. I don't speak well. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu say? We'll send somebody else. We'll send somebody with you. It'll work out. It'll work out. Now, let's think this back again. Because I see you doing a lot of thinking in shir. So let's think. Right? You're Moshe Rabbeinu. You say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I know you want me to go. I know you want me to go. But I have a speech defect. Now you're the Ribono Shalom. So what do you say? Poof! You don't have a speech defect. How hard would that be to do? Okay, but no, okay, Baruch Hu says, you have a speech defect, so when you get somebody to go with you. What was even Moshe's Havamina? What was Moshe's Havamina to say, I have a speech defect? The Baruch Hu doesn't want you to have a speech defect, so you don't have a speech defect. So the Ramban says an amazing thing. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu's speech defect could have been changed in a minute, but Moshe didn't want to daven for it, because Hitaka didn't want to go. This was the situation, and therefore, and the Ramban says, and because Moshe Rabbeinu didn't daven for it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't give it to him. Now everything's lined up here. He's going to be a shaliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to take the Jews out of Egypt. This is not a schar v'onesh thing. But sometimes if we don't ask, if we don't say please, if we don't turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so he perhaps won't give it to us. And it's so easy to ask, but we never think of it. Rabbi, so many times in our life, the last one, and I use the word one with the capital O, the last one that we use to get involved is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the last resource, right? Like a doctor will say. What will the doctor say? At this point, it's out of our hands. It's in the hands of God. As if it wasn't in the hands of God when the person came into the hospital. Of course it was in the hands of God when he came into the hospital. When do we ask? So I lose my keys, right? It happens to me all the time. I'm a very scatterbrained person. So I lose my keys. So what do? I spend 15 minutes looking for my keys. I have a tile on my keys. But I can't remember, for some reason, the way they run their businesses, the battery runs out every year. And I only get them like every 3 years. So I have a tile on it, but the tile doesn't have a battery. So it's not going to help. So I'm looking in here and this, and I'm calling my secretary, I'm going to be late for this meeting and this. And then when I'm totally exhausted, I say, could you give me a hand? Why don't I do that first? I'll tell you a secret. He knows where the keys are. He knows where the keys are. Why is he the last one that I bring in? I read a fascinating sefer last year. Gave the following mashal. I don't think it's a mashal. The guy seemed to say that he had a chaver that this happened to. This guy's writing a book about Tefila, and he's over by his friend's house. And they're in his apartment in Eretz Yisrael. And you've all been in Eretz Yisrael long enough to know that cockroaches in Eretz Yisrael are different. It's just a different variant. There are a lot of things that are different in Eretz Yisrael. The avira, the very air is different, and the cockroaches are much different in Eretz Yisrael. So he's running out. He has this cockroach. Now, when a bug comes into my house, so I feel. Some of you may have learned the sugya of a baba machteres. A person comes in a tunnel. So a person comes in a tunnel to come into my house, basically gives up his right to live. So a bug comes into my house. I have this big retractable fly swatter, and I'm going around the house. I'm doing my thing. But every family has, and of course the Penners have one kid who won't let you kill the bug. Why don't you kill the bug? Why do you have to kill the bug? You could just take the bug outside. It's going to take you half an hour to catch the bug. Okay, no, but you shouldn't kill the bug. We're going to catch the bug with 2 cups. We're going to bring the thing outside. We're going to bring it. Okay, 2 sheetas. No. So this guy has a friend. This guy who's writing a sefer on Tefila has a chaver who's of the second sheeta that he says that you have to go and you have to try to catch the bug. But it takes a really long time. So the bug is running. These cockroaches are not only large here in this country, they're very fast. They went through basic training. So the cockroach is going over that, and he's running around trying to catch this thing. The friend is just laughing. He's running around trying to do this. Oh, I'm on the camera there. And can't get too far. So he's got it. Finally, he has the bug in the corner. He's got the bug in the corner. And they're locking eyes. He's looking at the bug, and he's holding the cups, and he's trying to, this is it, this moment of glory. And suddenly, the bug picks up these 2 wings from under its thing. It's a beetle, it's not a Jew. And it flies right over the guy's shoulder. He's so mad at the bug, because why did I waste 10 minutes? And he said to the bug, this is ridiculous, I've been running around the house the whole time. If you had wings, why didn't you use them? So if you write that with a friend, if you do that in front of a friend who's writing a sefer on Tefila, right, you have wings, Rabbi. And you know what? I'll tell you a secret. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to use the wings. He wants you to ask him. What if we turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu first instead of last? I gave a shir a couple of years ago. Anybody here from Chicago? Oh, you're from Chicago, right? So I gave a shir in Chicago a couple of years ago on Tefila. This isn't easy to remember, but you have to keep trying it. It'll change your life if you do it. I gave a shir in Chicago, and the way I give shirim on like usually a Sunday morning in Chicago, so you can get a flight from New York to Chicago, you can get in and give the shiur and get back in a plane and still have a day back in New York. So I always prepare my trip with just enough time to get from O'Hare to somewhere in Chicago, enough time to give the shiur, go to Romania, get salami, and get back on the plane. Okay, and they still don't know me. I go a few times a year to do this. I get stopped every time. What are these pipe bombs? They're not pipe bombs, they're salami. I told you. We do this every single year. So I'm doing my normal ride. This time I got a ride. Somebody was nice. I didn't have to take an Uber. Somebody gave me a ride to Romania. Romania, for those who don't know, is really geschmack. Salami and meats in Chicago. So I get a ride. Somebody gives me a ride to Romania. So you know, guys don't trade names. So we're just talking the whole way, but I didn't catch the guy's name. I don't know, he's a nice guy, gave me a ride. My wife's always saying, like, what was the person's name? Whatever, some guy, he's a good ride, we're talking. So we get to Romanian, and I'm ordering salamis. I realize I don't have my bag with me, which means I don't know my wallet, I don't know my tickets, I don't have anything. I'm supposed to get to the airport, and I don't even know who this guy was. So I start trying to think, whatever, anybody that I knew in Chicago, going around and everything. And after about 20 minutes of total panic, I found my bag on a folding chair that I had put it there. And I said, Mark is what I call myself. I said, you idiot. I said, you idiot, you just gave a shiur on Tefila. He knew where your bag was the whole time. How many times do you have to train yourself to ask him first, not to ask him last? Ask him first. Bring him in. There's a famous comment from the Kutzker. Somebody once asked the Kutzker Rabbi, where is God? And the answer that he gave was, wherever you let him in. This is such a good place to let him in. To let him be part of the search, to let him be part of that. Again, it takes training. We have to catch ourselves that the first thing that we should do is we should ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And lest you think that, wait a minute, I went to a hashkafa shiur, and I heard that it's not enough just to ask Hashem. You have to do what's called your hishtadlus. You got to do your job, right? The Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, says that the ikar hishtadlus, part of hishtadlus, is to remember to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The beginning of this week's parsha, we'll end with this. We know that Yaakov Avinu does 3 things to prepare for Esav. Right? 3 things to prepare for the fateful meeting with Esav. Number 1, he's going to split the camp into 2. He's going to send matanos. And he's going to daven. And we always usually think that, what are those 3 things? There's the real things he did, and then okay, whatever it's worth, I'm going to daven also. I'm not going to miss mincha that day because it's a big day, so I should make sure to catch mincha that day. As if these are the things that are really going to make the difference, and tefillah is of a different category. But both say tefillah is part of our hishtadlus. Tefillah is part of our hishtadlus. Tefillah, says the Ramchal, is the ikar part of our hishtadlus. Of course he expects us to go looking for those keys. Of course he expects us to go around and make the phone calls to find. Of course he expects us to do what we can. But we can start by saying, could you give me a hand? You can do that in your Shemona Esrei. You can ask your Rabbi where the proper place is in Shemona Esrei to add in a couple of the things that you need in your day. Or you could simply do it with your own words, to say when you begin on any process or anything, or even the beginning of a day of learning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let me advance in my learning. Let me understand shiur today. Let me ask a good kasha in shiur today. Let me have the answer today in shiur. Wherever you let him in is where he can help you and he can be a part of it. Much hatzlacha to everybody.